Whether you're hosting game day or movie night, DiGiorno knows that planning a watch party on a budget isn't easy. You need the perfect setting, the perfect squad, and the perfect eats. Luckily, you're a game time mastermind, and you know that grabbing DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza can bring home a W because it's packed with half a pound of cheese, sauce, and other toppings and comes at an incredible price. Make the game-winning call and grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
Allstate wants to remind fans that mayhem is everywhere, like when the tailgate party shows up at your house after the big win. Everything's great until the hot plate gets too hot for the tablecloth. Now your kitchen's up in smoke. And if you don't have the right home insurance coverage, the cost to fix this could sideline your savings. So switch to Allstate, save money, and get protected from mayhem like this. Not available in every state based on coverage selected, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Savings vary.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome in. It's Wednesday, February 21st. We're back. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm joined by Matthew Betz, Mike Wright, and I'm Kyle Borganoni.
What's up, fellas? How we doing today?
That's the energy I'm talking about, Kyle.
Kyle's bringing
I almost forgot to mention myself.
Yeah, it'd been fine.
Okay. Yeah, now
the people know you.
I'm stoked. Apparently they do, just by my voice, but I'm stoked to talk about what we're going to talk about today because there's so much I think I might know about this year's wide receiver class. And then there's so much that just based on one tweet, I don't know anything anymore. And I feel like that's just how it works in 2024 NFL fantasy scouting, whatever season we're in, where just one piece of information, one video, one tweet could change everything you feel about a player. And I hate that about myself. I hate that I've guessed wrong on wide receivers based on one piece of information. So this is different this year. I'm feeling good about this class.
Here's what you got to do, Kyle. Stop guessing. Start knowing.
Yeah, Kyle, I have a really good strategy for this wide receiver class and just in general with these rookies. Why don't you just take the best players?
I've done that before, and I believe that I've taken a player named N'Keal Harry in a draft before, years ago.
Yeah, you guys remember Treylon Burks?
Well, he's still breathing. I was doing some numbers.
Oh, no.
Look at he's alive. He has a
year 3, right?
Yeah, we're going into year 3.
Okay. One more.
He's on life support. He's fine. So let's start off this discussion. We're going to talk about the top 6 wide receivers. Next week, we're going to go even deeper into the wide receivers. So I feel like there's a really, really healthy discussion we're about to have, but I think evaluating wide receivers is so different. We've done the episodes the last couple weeks on running backs, on quarterbacks, and it's just not the same because we're looking at players that are dependent on seeing the ball from somebody else. And if you just look at the targets for a player, you're going to go, wow, this guy explodes. Look at the highlights. Look what he can do. And you don't often see what they can't do. So I just want to open up that discussion before we get any further. Do you guys find evaluating wide receivers harder for you than maybe the other positions?
I'll jump in. Yeah, running back is the easiest not in terms of getting everything right, but easiest as in you can really see what they are doing. It's not often on just a broadcast camera that the running back disappears from view from the play and then reappears, with all of a sudden they're downfield and they're catching a ball. It's not that it doesn't happen, but for the most part you can see everything. And if you don't have access to the all 22 of every single game, it can be difficult. Now, those are out there. If you know the right people and make the right connections, you can find some all 22 footage, which that's extremely helpful. But if you don't have that, then yeah, it can be difficult. But you're doing things like, for me, it's all a part of the picture of I love watching the film. How does this player move? How do they catch the ball? There's someone in this draft class who he loves low pointing the ball. Like it seems to be his favorite thing. Just I want to catch it in the basket, essentially. Instead of going up like they teach you of go get the ball up in the air, high point it, catch it with your hands. He says, no, I will basket catch it. And he's been successful doing it. But so you're looking at those things, and then you're looking at the data of how did this person come in their offense? How did they do? Because some colleges put up full video game Madden numbers. And then you're like, well, look at his yards. He's a 1,700-yard wide receiver. And then you actually look at the market share and you realize, oh, well, he's only 25% of the yards or whatever. I'm just making up numbers. But you realize while their raw numbers were fantastic, inside of the offense, they actually were piece number 3. So you got to factor all of those things in.
Yeah. It's
what about you?
There's so many moving parts for wide receivers where it's like, you've got the quarterback play. You've got the factor of who did they play with on the field? Were they playing, alongside other NFL talents like the Ohio State guys for years? And then when they get to the pros, are they
who did they play against?
Right. That's a huge thing too. When they go to the pros, obviously landing spot matters, but sometimes overrated. But also like year one production means so much for these guys. When we talk about dynasty hit rates over the next 2-3 years, that's a factor. And it feels like one of the most challenging things to get right because first-round wide receivers bust all the time. We see it kind of year after year after year. Whereas, with running backs and quarterbacks, yeah, they bust sometimes, but if they go early in the draft, they're not guaranteed to hit. But especially running backs, the first-round guys, and there won't be any this year, but there have been just success after success in the first round. It's like, oh, okay, we know what's happening here. Quarterbacks, again, yeah, they fail, but they're getting a shot. And then wide receivers, it's like, are they actually talented enough to win at the next level? And that's a question that's extremely hard to answer. So we try to use the film, obviously our database of historical numbers and comparing it to other prospects and stuff like that. But to me, it is, I think, pretty difficult to evaluate.
It is a collective approach. And I feel like we've said that every single week, and I'm going to keep saying it. I mean, I was having a conversation back and forth with somebody on Twitter because I shared some statistics, some of the ones we'll talk about on this show, but someone's like, oh, well, that must mean this player is going to be a bust. I go, no, you use a statistic and you combine that with your film evaluation and then what we don't know yet, the draft capital, and you're going to get this kind of broad sweeping approach where you look at a player and say, okay, well, here's 2 or 3 red flags going into this. And, everyone's going to have some issue. Like even we were talking beforehand, it's like Marvin Harrison Jr., he's the first wide receiver we're going to talk about. If he goes to New England as opposed to Arizona, does that change how we feel about him at all? I mean, prospect-wise, I don't know, but year one in the NFL, I'm slightly scared if his quarterback is, I don't know, veteran whoever or Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, the mock draft that came out recently was Daniel Jeremiah.
Yes,
Kyle. Yeah, it had Marv going to the Patriots at 3, and then Malik Nabers going at the 104 to the Arizona Cardinals. And wow, that would make me the Cardinal. I love Malik Nabers. It's Marv feels like the more can't miss prospect, whatever. But if that happens, and I don't have a 101 anywhere in any of my dynasty leagues, so I am here for that chaos that happened to me when I had the 101, and this is the easiest Jonathan Taylor pick ever, and then the draft messed everything up, and I got my pick wrong. So I'm very excited to watch all the 101ers out there have to just sweat out the draft because it's an unbelievable situation. The Patriots, who have given us nothing at the wide receiver position for what it feels like a decade now, and there's just what hope is going on for the offense right now with the Patriots? So it will be so bad. But anyways, sorry for the side tangent. We'll get to the prospects, but oh man, if it happens,
You're stressing me out.
Because for the record, Kyle and Jeremy have the 101 in our main dynasty league, and you guys have been flexing that 101 for months. And if this happens, I will be somewhat happy.
I hope it happens.
Yeah. And, honestly, mid-February to March is the time to overthink things about
Yes,
30
it is.
times over. So, so we got a lot of stuff coming up. The combine stuff will be coming up in the next 2 weeks. That'll change some of our rankings, which in the 2024 DFS Pass, Dynasty Pass, part of the UDK Plus, we have rookie mock draft out. We have rookie rankings. I know that you guys are updating those as we kind of
still it's still through the whole scouting process, and as we get more information, those are pretty. Those are not static. Like those are flowing through the process, and then after the combine happens, there will be a whole new drop of content where everything gets updated, and then after the NFL draft, everything will be updated yet again. And you can, if you want to check that out, go to udkplus.com.
All right, let's talk about these wide receivers.
Hey, rookie. Welcome to the NFL.
We're going to first talk about how we scout wide receivers. And I got some of these questions on our Footballers Discord, just like, how do you guys do this? And we talked earlier about all 22 film is ideally what you would want to use, where you can see everything going on the field, and you could see, when this player's running a route, not just when they get a target. And just a pro tip, one of the best ways to do that is you need to double up games. So there are games in the college football season where you can get 5 or 6 players in there. Like Washington played Oregon twice. So you could see both quarterbacks. You can see Bucky Irving. You can see the wide receivers. FSU played LSU. Like, you can double up these games and just watch the whole game, a condensed version, and actually see what's going on, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to try to, figure out this player only from their highlights. So highlights are great. We're not saying don't ever watch them, but you need to be able to look, at collectively an entire approach for a game. So NFL wide receiver ones, we've changed this, Mike, in our model over the years. We used to say a wide receiver one in the NFL, what we're looking for is a player, that's 6'2", 215, but we've had to kind of change our metrics.
Yeah, we have the wide receivers have, well, it's not that they've gotten smaller. I think it's just the league is now more open to smaller guys coming in and just being like, oh no, this player's great. Just because he's small, I'm not going to write him off, and we're going to give people a chance. And they come in there and they're having great success. And there is it kind of like the 3-down running back. I mean, at least to me, and with the evidence of who's actually showing up as a top 12 wide receiver now from year to year, the Giants, prototypical 1990s the X wide receiver, they're getting smaller. They're getting smaller. They're getting shiftier. They're getting faster. It's not all just you have to be the biggest guy in the field so you can overpower people with size and dominance. It's now give me the route tacticians, give me the guys who can create separation, and they have the great hands. So it's fun to watch the evolution of what's going on with the NFL on offense. I'm sure that stuff is going to continue to change. Like if you followed the main show, the Fantasy Footballers, when we did our whole Truth series, we talked about how scoring and all of these things are coming down, and it's the ebbs and flows of the NFL. The offense will figure it out. This is a new defense that everyone's dealing with, so it'll be fun to watch how it changes even more.
Betz, what do you look for when you are scouting wide receivers? You're putting that pen to the paper, you're grinding the film.
But quite literally putting the pen to the paper. Mike, I don't know if you know this, I've transformed into a notebook guy when I scout. I just like to handwrite a couple notes.
Oh gosh, you're on Jason's.
Well, it's not a black book per se. It's just like one of those ones we used to use in like high school or something.
Yeah,
but I feel
you
very smart
physically
doing it.
write it down.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, not every just like little notes to myself that I want to highlight.
Which that's fine.
With
The problem then becomes like
with hearts.
When if you're at an office and you go home, you go, I forgot all my notes. I go, no, I didn't, because they're in the cloud. I have them.
Well, the good thing
I
is,
go.
Mike, you guys let me work remotely, so I work from home.
That is a good point.
Never forget my notebook. But in my notebook, I'm looking for, and we talked about this a lot last year. I feel like we really hit the point home of like, I want to see a guy run a complex route tree. I want to see him line up all over the field. I want to see them do a lot of different things, not just be a screen guy, not just a deep ball guy, not just this is what they do and this is the only thing that they can do very well, because usually those kind of one-trick ponies scare me. They usually don't translate very well to the NFL, especially as Mike noted in today's NFL, where there was a lot of people making fun of the too high thing across, fantasy and in the NFL over the last 2 years, but like it's a real thing. Teams are running that on defense a lot more. And so if you can't beat zone coverage, if you can't understand how to operate in those coverages, you might struggle a little bit to learn as a pro. So I look for that type of thing on tape. On top of that, we mentioned kind of the production profiles we have in UDK Plus. I want to see guys earn targets, not just a splash play here or there where like at the end, the box score looks pretty good, but like how often is the quarterback looking for you? Because if you can't dominate at the college level, and we're trying to get the top 36 wide receivers for our fantasy lineups, most formats, like if you can't dominate at the college level, earning targets at a high level, how are you going to do that in the pros where the competition gets tough? So to me, I care a lot about those few things.
Mike, what about you? Any specific things just over the years that you've thought about with scouting wide receivers?
I kind of would echo what Betz is saying, and then just looking into more of their market share in there, using the hard data points, the things that you can't. You can argue about what's more important, but the numbers are the numbers. Where watching film, two people watching a player can have completely different takeaways because everyone has their own personal bias of, I like to see a player do this, make this move. And then the other person watching could say, well, I hate when they do that move. So those types of things. And then just trying to refine that and look at new stuff. And Kyle, I'm going to bring it up on the show.
All right.
Because we've been trying to figure out a more consumable. What?
I didn't know you were going there.
Yeah, I told you. I'm bringing it out. This is beta testing stuff. But hey, man, our listeners, this is our people, and that's what they're here for. Is we know now that targets per route run and yards per route run are excellent stats. They're excellent in the NFL of letting us know if a player is producing here. As long as they start getting more targets, this player could explode. And it's the same. You go look at college players. If they're producing well in those metrics, then oftentimes that translates to a good professional wide receiver. But it's that they're not really consumable numbers. So we've been trying to figure out a way to combine them, weight adjust them, and so we're working on a RouteScore. And I'm
trademark.
Yeah, trademark RouteScore. So I'm pretty excited to talk about it because it's a quick, easy number of the percentile, how high up were they in the metric. So, and back you go and you can. What's nice about numbers then is you can go backdate them. You already have the information of, well, this college player, I go back if I run the same formula for this player and I see that they were great in the NFL. Okay, that's some signal that this could be on to something. So pretty excited. And we have some guys who this year, unsurprisingly, if you've been following how the buzz on the wide receivers of, that we could get 7 or 8 guys in the first round, but at least, we're going to have a ton of day 1 and day 2 wide receivers, and their route scores reflect that.
I just want to double down on what Mike said about targets per out run, yards per out run, something we talk about a lot on the show. Betz will bring up a bunch of numbers too, but the reason why we care about those, like we always talk about how targets are earned. It's a skill in the NFL if you can earn targets, but routes show us even more. They show us the opportunity, or if you're running around and we always talk about you're just running cardio, you're Chris Conley or MVS and you got your cardio in, but you look up, you're like, man, they only targeted you like 10% of the time on your route. So targets per out run and yards per out run is something we'll talk about a lot, and we can look at college players and round 1 wide receivers over the last decade. Their targets per out run in college was 28%. Their yards per out run was 3.16. That's the average for round 1 wide receivers. Now, college numbers and pro numbers are going to look different. Like they're going to be boosted in college because most of these cornerbacks, I don't know if you guys know this when you're watching the film.
Oh, I know.
These dudes are going to be, high school coaches or, community
Kyle.
members. Like they're just going to be dudes. It's so true. Like I'm watching some of these, they're just going to be hanging out in the community, not doing anything related to football.
That can be coaching. Just because you weren't a pro level quarterback,
Guys,
it doesn't mean you have nothing to offer.
Guys, I watched some Oregon film because I love Oregon players. Portland State, they just rolled over them. And I'm just watching them just like, these guys are not this isn't competition. So it's hard for me to take some of that film. And I bring that up because you're going to see so many boosted numbers from some of these players. I was looking at my data set, like Andy Isabella, when he was in college.
2nd round pick before DK Metcalf.
I mean, he was targeted on like 38% of his routes. His yards per route run's like over 4. Like, he just destroyed every metric. And yet the level of competition doesn't matter. So all of that to say, we care about what they do on a route basis, because sometimes they'll be targeted, sometimes they won't. And what do they do after that is what we really care about. And then my last thing, I have to bring this up because this is my bugaboo this year, is what do they do against zone coverage? Betz mentioned it, but this is what teams are doing. 70% of the time, they're running zone. If you can't beat zone in college, where teams are doing it, 50% of the time, when it goes to 70%, if you don't have a quarterback that understands that, if you don't have a system that understands that in college, it's going to be really hard. Now, you can transition and be a part of a team that just like, hey, we know how to run this. We can utilize you in the right way. But it is at least a red flag if you are pretty bad against zone coverage. And I looked at some round 1 wide receivers that were bad. Guys, what if I told you that Jalen Reagor was the worst? Not just of like round 1, but round 1 or 2 wide receivers in the last like 8 years, yards per out run against zone. It was bad. Eagles, terrible pick. What were you thinking, Betz?
It's a great question because I remember that draft. I already had my Justin Jefferson jersey picked out in an Eagles uniform. Like, I was like, as soon as they put the card in, I am buying this jersey tonight. And pain. That's what happened.
I'm being a little harsh here because every single team has made mistakes, especially at wide receiver. I mean, you see the bus across the board. So let's take a quick break and then we'll jump into these guys.
Now is the time to accelerate innovation. T-Mobile for Business is powering Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix operations and epic fan experiences with secure, reliable 5G connectivity. Because an event this big and this fast deserves a network that can set the pace. See what our 5G advanced network solutions can do for your business at T-Mobile.com/now. View 5G device coverage and access details at T-Mobile.com.
Whether you're cheering on your favorite team or hosting a movie night, DiGiorno knows planning a winning watch party on a budget isn't easy. You need the perfect setting, the perfect squad, the perfect eats, and the perfect plan to keep everyone pumped all night long. So why would you fumble the play by ordering delivery? The wait times, the fees, the cold food, it can't outdo the delicious fresh-baked taste of DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza, especially on game night. No, you need to draw up the perfect plan. Luckily, you're a Game Time mastermind, and you know that grabbing a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza is one call that brings home a W. With half a pound of cheese, sauce, and other toppings at an incredible price, it's your game day MVP, most valuable pizza. So are you ready for a big W at your next watch party? Don't take any chances. Make the right call and grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
All right, we're starting this party off with Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. We all have him ranked 1. You know the name because you know his dad. And one of the things that I did just in my digging is in high school, he weighed 190 pounds. So when he came into Ohio State, it was a loaded wide receiver room and he was super skinny. So he's added 15 pounds and you see the production just go through the roof in 2022 and 2023. And this guy has been in professional workouts since he was a kid with his dad. So the uniqueness of this player isn't just the production and his physical traits. It's for a 6'4" player. He knows how to set people up and create separation. It's really rare to find that. So, Betz, where do you want to start talking with Marvin Harrison and why I should take him at the 101?
Yeah, I don't know that this is going to be very valuable for listeners because like most years, right? It's like you can debate who is the best it's Marvin Harrison, and it's not a question among anyone, really. Now, Mike brought up the scenario if he goes to the Patriots, what do we do there? But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The bottom line is like this dude has been the dude for the last couple of years. Like, you know, as soon as he came out, he was going to be the best prospect in the class, and all he's done is produce at Ohio State, and he's going to get top 5 NFL draft capital. So you add that, analytics piece into his production profile. with tape that just looks awesome. I mean, we talked about how, wide receiver ones in today's game are getting a little bit smaller, a little skinnier. They're not the same as they were 4, 5, 6 years ago. But 6'4", this dude has the frame to be everything and be a true alpha in the league. So I feel like we can keep the conversation kind of short on Marvin Harrison because it's so obvious. What I want to do is ask you guys, like, where do you see him valued? Because I think we all agree, like, he's the one-on-one. But where do you see him valued just in overall dynasty rankings? Because I've seen some ADP come out where he's a top 12 guy already, a top 10 guy already. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I believe good friend Ryan McDowell had tweeted out that over on DLF, they had their first ADP come out, and I don't have the tweet in front of me, but I thought it was like wide receiver 7, and I posted it because I'm like, oh man, that's spicy, and it's not not saying it's wrong, it's just it is such a leap of faith and projection of. Even though all the glowing things you're saying, you still have, like, you're still trying to compare him to NFL players who are actually doing it right now.
Right.
But I mean, it's if you want him in a startup, if you're in a startup draft and the rookies are involved, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to be so unbelievably aggressive and really help and really hope it works out. Okay, Betz found the tweet. Dynasty ADP of 112, wide receiver 7. Woo, man.
And it's
That's
a
some
sign.
courage.
It's a sign of the season that we're in and of hype, because if you had this conversation 2 months ago when we're still in the NFL season, he probably would have been around wide receiver, 12. And even like you think of like over the last couple of years, like Jamar Chase taken in the top 5, kind of seen as like, this is an elite prospect. His ADP was not that high. So we are dealing with a different player, but would you rather have Puka Nacua or Marvin Harrison Jr. in Dynasty?
Wow.
Or you could have both of them on your team, like we will.
Yeah, well, good for you.
I'll take that option.
For both of them?
I'll take both.
I mean, right now, oh, dude, that is an absurd question. An absurd question.
Like, I mean, Puka just had best wide receiver season of all time for a rookie. And to say that Marvin's going to do that is a stretch. I mean, just a massive stretch to say this guy's going to come in year one and put up, top 5 numbers for fantasy. So, I don't blame anyone to say they want Marvin if they're a rebuilding team and they've been waiting, but I think I would still take Puka.
I lean that way too.
Same.
Not
he's already done it in the NFL. He can.
Yeah. I'll just add this point, like his acceleration for somebody who's 6'4" is not normal. And, usually we talk about these big bruising guys, but like, the comp I've seen, and I appreciate it's AJ Green, but I think he has more polish. Like AJ Green was taken 4th overall out of Georgia. Just like, okay, this is rare for someone to be this tall and be able to move like this. So, man, his tape's awesome. His tape against Georgia 2 years ago was incredible. And then he got hurt in the game, but he had already went 106-2 against an NFL defense, right? Like these are all players from Georgia that were in the NFL. So
yeah, my quick piece is that with how big he is, like the routes and the football IQ that he has of Betz, you said it, of like he sets up defenders, and he does, just with quick shoulder moves, getting a DB to turn and bite on a certain route, but then having the agility and being fluid with that gigantic man body to then cut an out route it's pretty wild, and his hands are fantastic, and he's just so strong. He won't run the speed of DK Metcalf, but and I'm not to completely compare him to, it's just, but like he's humongous and he's still a more refined wide receiver than Metcalf is to this day.
Yeah. I mean, every single mark we have, every single yards per out run, targets per out run, he's at the top of all of them. So,
yep.
Let's move on to Malik Nabers from LSU. Just a massive season, alongside Jaden Daniels, but 1,569 yards, 14 touchdowns. He's only 20.7 years old. And I've seen people talk about this, but like he was a 3-sport star in high school, and you can kind of see he played baseball, played football, played track. And it's like he
played track.
You guys know what I'm talking about. He played on the team called track.
Who's winning the match?
He did well for the team. He fits the NFL of 2024 so well in terms of his skill set of getting open. I mean, guys, his yards per out run against zone, 4.42. That is like off the charts good.
Delicious.
Here are the first-round wide receivers with over 4 yards per out run in zone since 2015. Jalen Waddle, CeeDee Lamb, Devonta Smith, Drake London. I mean, these are the elites that were taken, in the top 20 of the draft. So my first note was, holy crap, he turns and shifts into high gear so fast after the catch. And it's awesome. His separation on curl routes, on digs is just awesome. So in the NFL, we're talking about what we look for. I look for a player that I don't care how big he is, but he's big enough and he gets open and he's freaking fast after the catch. So there's a lot to like here, especially if you're going to get near top 5 draft capital.
Yeah, my first note for Malik is just his start-stop back into start. That speed is wild. Not many guys have that type of an acceleration. He is his weight is listed low. His weight is the thing we'll be looking at. And again, the NFL is changing, but if you're trying to find a knock against him, it's that he's a thinner guy, but he's so fast. His short area speed is incredible. His twitch movement is fantastic. And at least in where I was watching and in my evaluation of him, is I said his weight is listed low, but I'm still seeing him pull tacklers forward. Like, it's not every single time he gets stood up and then the tree falls backwards. He's able to take some guys along the ride with him. His route score, 99 percentile. I mean, this is an elite prospect, just like Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, the thing about Malik Nabers that I keep coming back to, and it's so funny how we view prospects when we get to this time of the calendar year. Like, if there was no Marv, everyone would be talking about Malik Nabers. Like, yes. He is that good. And to me, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, to me, he's more of a 1B than a 2 in this class. Like, I think Malik Nabers is just an unreal prospect. You talk about a 3-year player who declared early, had 2 dominant seasons in the SEC, and Kyle mentioned kind of the comparisons of like how he operates in yards per out running against zone. With the hits that are on that list, it's just unreal. And I see him play and I watch him play. The way he moves, the way he operates on the perimeter and in the slot, he is today's NFL wide receiver 1, where you can scheme him touches, you can get him on deep balls, you can get him on intermediate routes. He can literally do everything. And then when you get the ball in his hands, he's the best yak guy, I think, in this class, and that we're going to talk about today. So just an unreal prospect, very high on Malik Nabers. I think very clearly the 2 in this class, and you could even say 1B, like I mentioned earlier, just a really, really strong profile all around that matches some really special tape.
Yeah, I mean, some of the comps, it's the Jalen Waddle yak stuff that we loved at Alabama, mixed with the twitchy Garrett Wilson stuff, but I think he has way more acceleration than even Garrett Wilson. So it's
I think so too.
It's hard to poke holes. I will say, like, there will be bigger cornerbacks and there will be press coverage that he sees in the NFL, but you're going to get a lot of clean releases where he's just so quick at the line of scrimmage that a lot of times you just can't even get your hands on him. And he's not like, the weight stuff we'll see, 199, like, is he coming around there? Does he put on 5-10 pounds, something? I don't know. But at the end of the day, like, he's so quick that it might just be irrelevant. So every single metric score, I wish I had some more negative things to say, but I don't. Let's move on, because I think from here, we'll be able to raise some red flags of just like, okay, here's some things that I'm just a little concerned, but the draft capital likely will be round 1 for most of these guys. It's Odunze of Washington. I watched some high school tape, and dude was a man among boys. I mean, it was...
Oh, man. You want to bring up the Derrick Henry high school rushing numbers next?
Oh, my gosh.
If you want to, let's... this is where I bring up, like, I know I played against...
College superstar turned first-round pick was excellent in high school.
Imagine. So it took him a little bit in college to kind of grow into his role, but we've talked about this, that 2020 is a special year with COVID stuff where you kind of have to like adjust for players. But checks almost every single box of measurables, 6'3", 215. His breakout age is 19.3. And this past year, he led all of college football in receiving yards. So a lot of big plays, right? A lot of deep yards. I love seeing that. But Betz, I feel like you brought this up before, that it's not something that you would say like, okay, if someone can catch the deep ball, they're an elite player. It's more of like a bonus.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And he's very good on those, and you watch him kind of out of the slot, like the slot fades, and some of the double moves that he has on tape for go balls are really good. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that feels like there's something missing from his game, where you watch Marvin Harrison Jr., you watch Malik Nabers, like they just win in a variety of ways. And with Odunze, I saw not a one-trick pony, but almost just like that's his calling card, and it worked, so they just kept hitting him with it over and over again. I didn't see a lot of nuanced routes. I didn't see a ton of winning in the short to intermediate area of the field. So if there's kind of one guy in this class, there's actually multiple guys, but one guy in this class that kind of everyone just assumes this is definitely wide receiver 3, let's just move on. I get it because the analytical profile is so good, but I would be lying if I didn't say that there's something about his game I just feel like is missing. Like a lot of his production came on contested catches last year, 75% contested catch rate per PFF. That's just an out-real number that will certainly regress in the NFL. And so if he can't win in that way in the pros, I just feel like I want to see more. So I love the profile, I love the analytical profile. Like I mentioned, just the dominator rating, the breakout age, the early production, all those things are there. But if we're nitpicking these guys, which we should do, I feel like I wanted to see more on tape from Odunze.
So he killed man coverage, which if I talk so much about zone coverage, it doesn't mean if someone's good at man, it's like a negative. Like, I mean, the bully ball stuff worked where they threw it down the field, contested catch. I mean, 9 touchdowns against man coverage, led this entire class, 3.75 yards per out run in man. I think I'm interested to see if he gets run as a big slot wide receiver because he's not really explosive. He's more like smooth. And so I think that can work. And we've seen the NFL where you get big guys who, you know, I think he's a fine route runner. He's not like a tactician, but I think it can work. The problem is just finding out, like, is that going to work? The fade routes, the go stuff, is that going to be repeatable? And we've seen in the NFL when you have players, you know, like Mike Williams, I put Mike Williams without all the flopping was one of his comps. Mike Williams went 107. It can work, but there's also these boom bust seasons where you end up getting 10 touchdowns or you end up, you know, it doesn't work out that way. So I like Odunze. He's probably going to go top 10. I've seen the Bears a lot, but he's not as well-rounded as the other two.
Yeah, I kind of echo what you guys are saying of I really like him. So, but as it's harder to talk about things you don't like about a player. It's easier we could gush about everybody, but I feel like when I'm watching him a lot, like his reputation is like terrifying defenders, which it should. I mean, the dude had an absolute incredible season, but I'm seeing so many DBs afraid of the speed backed up, and then Rome has good feet of chopping down, hitting a good comeback route or a dig or something like that. But it's like in the NFL, unless you're at a certain speed threshold, dudes aren't going to be scared of you and creating real easy layups for you. So that'll be the thing where I'm looking for if the DBs are just like, no, we're not going to give you space. I'm going to be able to run with you because I'm an NFL player. We'll see how successful the deep ball is then. Rome could be one of these guys. There's so much to like about him that it could definitely work out. But we're kind of in that bell curve of coming down of it would surprise me. How am I trying to say this? Like it wouldn't totally catch me off guard if it didn't work, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think it will, but it's one of those, yeah, okay. Yep. No, we got Ragered or whatever. Here also the purple's not helping. Guys, I'll be honest. I mean, this is the hard-hitting analysis people are here for. The
Dude,
purple
I've seen
freak.
you wear purple, though.
No, I love the color purple. But I have seen TCU wide receivers.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying. This is nonsense. This is complete and total garbage and should not be in your analysis. And yet I'm a human being, and I see the purple, and I go, oh, I've seen 3 guys coming from that color, and they've all disappointed.
Oh, man. I'm going back to his stats. If you want to see the Josh Doxson numbers, they were really good. He was just really old. But yeah, TCU, that's tough. I think what I'm hearing you saying is for fantasy purposes, I think it's not a slam dunk the way that we would say the other ones are near, they're
Correct.
close hits. We're not saying that everybody's going to be hit, but the landing spot matters. Chicago's the one that's been mentioned the most, but I don't know. Betz, any last thoughts on him for fantasy purposes? Because I feel like I could see him having an 8-9 touchdown season in his repertoire, but I also could see him not translate as well to the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I do think, and I kind of mentioned, like I was trying to nitpick some things, because Mike said it's so easy to come on here and just talk about every positive. But like you said, this guy is going to most likely go top 10, almost certainly top 15. And so, again, you throw that stuff into the early production, the breakout age, all those things. He's still a really strong prospect in this class. So even though I mentioned I was a little disappointed, I still think he's a pretty good asset to be targeting in rookie drafts. And like you said, we'll see on the landing spot. But I do agree, kind of like you mentioned, to me, his ceiling will come from big play and touchdown production, which just invites so much more variance. So if it works, I think it's going to work and it's going to be awesome. But like Mike said, I think we're seeing some downside case here in his profile.
Every single mock draft has Caleb Williams 1, Odunze at 9, and pairing those together is fun. It's fun to project and think about that moving forward. So we'll find out his landing spot.
I mean, that is an ultimate jump start.
Yes.
For your offense. You get what you hope is your franchise quarterback. You get, Odunze gets to be the wide receiver 2 on his team. I mean, he doesn't even have to be the alpha. That'd be a pretty special situation.
All right, so then let's say he goes to the Bears. Would you rather have DJ Moore or Rome Odunze in Dynasty? DJ Moore is 26.8 years old somehow. I feel like he should be 29.
I'll still take DJ Moore.
Yeah, I would still take DJ Moore too.
Okay. I think it's close if you know that's the landing spot, but we'll find out. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll find out about Mike and Betts' favorite wide receiver in the class. I mean, they just love this guy.
Now is the time to accelerate innovation. T-Mobile for Business is powering Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix operations and epic fan experiences with secure, reliable 5G connectivity. Because an event this big and this fast deserves a network that can set the pace. See what our 5G advanced network solutions can do for your business at T-Mobile.com/now. View 5G device coverage and access details at T-Mobile.com.
Whether you're cheering on your favorite team or hosting a movie night, DiGiorno knows planning a winning watch party on a budget isn't easy. You need the perfect setting, the perfect squad, the perfect eats, and the perfect plan to keep everyone pumped all night long. So why would you fumble the play by ordering delivery? The wait times, the fees, the cold food, it can't outdo the delicious fresh-baked taste of DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza, especially on game night. No, you need to draw up the perfect plan. Luckily, you're a game time mastermind, and you know that grabbing a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza is one call that brings home a W. With half a pound of cheese, sauce, and other toppings at an incredible price, it's your game day MVP, most valuable pizza. So are you ready for a big W at your next watch party? Don't take any chances. Make the right call and grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
All right, we're back. I mean, these guys have some hot takes, and I'll try to cool them down. But for real, Florida State's Keon Coleman, I've seen on Twitter that people haven't really treated him the kindest in terms of his statistics, and we'll bring those up because there are some red flags. But I think what I'm coming around to is saying, okay, here's what I don't like, but here's how I could see it work in the NFL. So Coleman transferred from Michigan State and then went to Florida State for 2023. I found this quote from him. He said, Michigan State, it was kind of like a 2-year sentence for me. I didn't really feel like the Big Ten was a system for me.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Get
like,
bodied.
oh,
Jeez.
I know.
Yes.
But the measurables, they're all there. 20.8 years old, check. 6'4", check. 215 weight, check. 19.3 breakout age, check. The dominator rating, 36%. So all of those numbers, if you're just looking at that, you'd say this looks like a first-round wide receiver, and for a while he was mocked there. He's slowly kind of been dropping in a lot of mock draft boards. Daniel Jeremiah didn't even have him in the first round. And the problem with Coleman is that you do see kind of this boom-bust profile. So monster games against LSU, he had 3 touchdowns. So if you want to watch LSU, Florida State, to see a bunch of prospects, that's the game. But then there's just nothing, some games where it's like, where is this dude? So Betz, I'll let you start us off first with Coleman.
Yeah, man, he's such a tough prospect to talk about because, like you said, the analytical stuff is there. And when you watch him play, there's some wow moments on tape where you're like, he just caught that? Like, he really just caught that. He makes so many fun plays. But when you take a step back from the highlights and you kind of digest everything else, there's so many red flags in this guy's profile. And to me, really, he's a guy that I'm lower on. When you look at his ability to win against zone coverage, it's not there. 1.65 yards per route run against zone is a terrible number. And you mentioned the games where he exploded, 9 for 122 and 3 against LSU, 9 for 140 and 1 against Syracuse last year. But if you are a round 1 wide receiver, you can't disappear in every other game, which is basically what he did. And to me, that's just a huge red flag when you look at him, on the whole, as far as his profile. So I think he's going to test really well, which is interesting at the combine in a couple of weeks. He's kind of been labeled as a really, really good athlete. Went to Michigan State to play basketball. So if that tells you anything about this guy's ability, he went there to play football and basketball. So he's an athlete, but I'm just not sure he's there as an NFL wide receiver talent, if that makes sense, from a nuanced route running standpoint, understanding coverages, the ability to create separation, all those sort of things. So he's polarizing, but overall, there's so many red and yellow flags in his profile that I'm probably going to be lower than consensus on him.
Where it becomes very difficult for me on Coleman is, I agree with Betz, of when you're throw on a Coleman highlight tape. It is a good time. It's
fun.
Truly, it's really fun of the amazing things that he has done. And yet when you're kind of deeper diving his data, it is an enigma, because you have a guy, so in 2023, he accounted for 22% of the receiving yards for Florida State. The threshold you want to see is 34%. At least that in our production profile, that we're hoping for a number close to that, or over that's fantastic, but just at least close to that. So that's way under. And yet the touchdown percentage is 51%, and you're looking for only 36% of the touchdown. So he exceeds so much in that particular statistic, and when you watch the film, the dude's getting screens all the time, but his ADOT is fine. You would think that with all this, I'm like, how is his average depth of target actually strong when I'm seeing all these screen passes? Is because then you see huge plays, but then a huge red flag. Again, we're in beta, but of these guys that we're talking about, his route score went down substantially. It went down 15 percentage points from 2022 to 2023, and that's not something I want to see. It's like, and the huge knock for the score is coming from it because his yards per route run went down. Make sure I'm looking at this right here.
1.74 this past year is very, very low for someone that might get round 1 draft capital.
Yeah, so if you're looking at it just statistically, he makes no sense. It makes no sense. So if you're the hope for him as a hit for me in fantasy is he's a touchdown dominator. He's a 50 to 60 reception per year guy, but somehow you're getting 8+ receiving touchdowns. Those players exist. It does happen. And the draft capital will tell you a lot for him, but I'm baffled. I still don't know what to make of Keon Coleman right now.
I think that's the perfect spot to land. If you're listening to the show, you're like, okay, well, am I supposed to be in or out? It's like, well, here's a bunch of red flags, and here's some things that he checks all these boxes for. And right now in February, you don't have to make up your mind yet. Like, we're going to find out how he tests too. We're going to find out the draft capital. In terms of comps of his skill set, potential draft capital, George Pickens shows up a lot, who also struggled against zone in college. He was hurt his last year, but the year before, 1.82 yards per out run, very close. I think his hands are actually fine for a player that kind of seems like he's boom bust. Like, I think his hands are actually legit. So it just kind of matters, like, where is he going? Like George Pickens, we kind of feel oh man, that is a boom bust player, but he's in Pittsburgh. So if he was in a different situation, we might feel different. But Keon Coleman is definitely one of the more volatile players. And it wouldn't shock me, guys. I feel like he belongs in the second round of the NFL draft. Like, I just don't see a team, and maybe the back of first round, that's like, hey, I can work with this. But Toolsy, I think.
Yes. Like, physically very, very gifted. And that's why it's so confusing, because you can see it. You can see the path to this guy being a really good wide receiver as a pro, but then you can pretty easily see the path of it's not going to work.
Yeah. Betz, for rookie drafts, does he feel like a player that because I feel like people would feel like, okay, let's say he gets early, round 2 draft capital. I feel like people are going to be like, well, I'm slotted in here, I have to take him. Like, I just feel like he's one of those players, if you have a conviction based on all the red flags, like, it's okay to let somebody else go for it. That's where I'm at right now.
I think that's a really interesting way to say it, because I was thinking the exact same thing as you started talking of, like, this feels like the guy that you almost feel like, I have to take him, right? Like, I'm at the 10, I'm making this up, the 107 or whatever, and you're like, I got to take him, right? Like, he's kind of been the guy on ADP, he's mocked there, whatever. I would not be afraid to pass. I get the upside is there, but like I said, there's just so many red flags in his profile, and if you have conviction on one of the other wide receivers, a running back who lands in a great spot, Brock Bowers, like, whoever, don't be afraid to pass on him. I just want to point out too, yards per team pass attempt has been a pretty sticky stat when you're looking at college production, and really it's a continuum, and obviously the higher the better, but if you can't clear 2 yards per team pass attempt in college, it is a massive, massive red flag. The guy never did it. Some of the other guys who never did it are guys like Auden Tate, Dorial Green-Beckham, Aaron Dobson, just a lot of misses. So if he hits for fantasy and for the NFL, he will be an exception to the rule, so to speak. So again, I'm just willing to kind of let my league mates generally chase those guys. The toolsy, traitsy guys, like, you can have them kind of thing. I don't see an NFL caliber wide receiver when I watch him play.
Mike, Denzel Mims shows up as another comp, second round pick.
Yeah. That Denzel Mims did not work out.
I feel like Denzel Mims pops up every couple of weeks or something, like, hey, he might be on this team. Anyway, just
Denzel Mims got screwed. I mean, the dude was up against it. I mean, what was it? He had, maybe it was COVID, something where he lost just an insane amount of weight. He was so sick. He lost an insane amount of weight. And then, which it could have been from watching the quarterback play for the New York Jets as well. Like, the dude was set up to fail. Now, I don't know if he would have succeeded in another situation, but sometimes you can just see a situation and go, I am so sorry, young man, who the dream that you worked your entire life to get to is now doomed because of random chance.
All right, we got 2 more wide receivers, and I feel like this next name is another name where people are all over the map. It's Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, it's the basket catch guy.
Mike has referred to him as basket catch Brian. He's tough because out of nowhere, so went to LSU, 17 touchdowns this past year. The year before was just 361 yards and 5 touchdowns. So it's wild to see that big of a spike. 6'4", 201, so kind of more slender for a tall guy. But his targets per out run is a bit of a red flag. And you can also explain that away saying, well, of course, Malik Nabers is on his team. He's not going to be targeted. But 19.3% targets per out run this past year, despite getting 17 touchdowns. Since 2015, guys, here are the first-round wide receivers with a targets per out run below 23%. Kadarius Toney, Jalen Reagor, Henry Ruggs, Philip Dorsett, the little fast guys. And then you got BTJ coming in at 19%. So Betz, is that a red flag we at least first need to throw up? Because I'm going to share some stuff I like, but that's a red flag to me.
Yeah, I think it certainly is. And, I always get a little worried about these, kind of 1 year wonders where like they didn't do much at all for the first couple of years. And a lot of these guys did much as a freshman, but like at least in year 2, you're starting to see glimpses. Didn't really do much. Again, just 360 receiving yards basically in back-to-back seasons. And then all of a sudden, 1,200 yards this past year just explodes. And when you look at kind of how the NFL draft community was approaching Brian Thomas a year ago entering the season, we look at, different resources. One of them is grinding the mocks is pretty fun to look at. You can just see kind of where these guys' market has changed as far as what their expected draft position is. He wasn't even being drafted or like in any mock draft. Like he wasn't even on anyone's radar at all. And then he just all of a sudden now is like a guaranteed top 20 pick. It just seems a little missing the gap somewhere, basically, is kind of what I'm saying. And granted, he could be one of those guys that fits in very well for an NFL team and helps that team a ton more than helps us in fantasy. So I see the reason for why you would take him in round 1, but he only has 1 year of production in his profile, and that certainly is a little bit of a concern. The other thing for me that I mentioned, I like to look for a bunch of nuance in different areas of a player's game. Per ESPN's Jordan Reed, 41% of his production came on go routes last year. That's a little concerning as well. So I get the upside. I mean, the dude, 17 touchdowns. Like, yeah, we like touchdowns in fantasy, right? But there's a lot in his profile that I'm looking for more for sure.
It kind of goes hand in hand with Jaden Daniels' LSU career, right? Of the year that Brian had the no yards with Jaden. Well, Jaden had 2,900 passing yards, 17 touchdowns. And then his numbers the next year went to the 3,800 passing yards, 40 passing touchdowns on about 60 fewer passing attempts. On about 60 fewer attempts, his numbers went up almost 1,000 passing yards and 23 passing touchdowns.
He just had to get Kayshon Boutte out of the way.
So the point being, we would have to do some serious research to find something comparable to this where a quarterback goes from numbers that are not draft worthy to all of a sudden, he might be a top 5 pick, and the ascension of one of his wide receivers in the meantime with him. But I mean, it's big time program, it's big time numbers for him. He Betz just shared a tweet here, which is a fascinating one, saying that Brian Thomas didn't play football until 10th grade. So I mean, that's pretty wild. If that's an actual true stat, that's not been fact checked by our team. But
I need to talk to his teachers. The
point being, The point being, he's still learning the nuances of football, and there's some upside there. But it's similar to Keon Coleman. Of man, I'm going to let the draft tell me what NFL teams actually think about him. In terms of his actual numbers, very Keon Coleman-esque of 27% of the yards, but 39% of the touchdowns. As again, make sure you're looking at market share, not just the raw total of the passing yardage or receiving yardage. And then his route score, it's fine. Let me pull it up. We got Brian Thomas. So he's at 92%. He's under the threshold that I like to see, which is around the 95. Beta testing. But if under 95 has kind of been an issue so far, at least when you're trying to find true high-end wide receivers. Not every wide receiver has to be a top 10 fantasy producer. We need to start a whole bunch of guys. But I have my concerns with him, especially with all the basket catching.
Let me give you some stuff I saw scouting him, because the deep speed you mentioned, Betz, is good. He get behind defenders, a lot of these go routes. He can track the ball, and that's awesome. And you saw a special season from Jaden Daniels where the deep ball was working. I think his release off the line is really, really clean for someone who's 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", whatever he measures in a. The lateral movement is impressive. I'm like, okay, well, you shouldn't move like this for being that tall. And it's almost like he's just like skipping and dancing by wide cornerbacks. Like it's actually pretty special. Like I really, that stood out to me for someone who I thought, oh, it's just going to be the go route stuff. So I think he has some nuance to his game. The comps are all over the map. I mean, just like if this guy gets top 15 draft capital, that'll be interesting. It did come to mind though, Mike, when you talked about, man, when have we seen a quarterback put up a crazy touchdown season and one of his wide receivers put up a crazy touchdown season out of nowhere and then get drafted really high? At LSU, there is a quarterback named Joe Burrow who went out of nowhere and elevated not just, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, but a third wide receiver named Terrace Marshall Jr., who had a big TD season. And I hate saying it, but their size and build are very similar. So I had to run away. So that it gave me some fears. So I have some deep wounds with TMJ. But I also think there's some Nico Collins to his game where he's big enough. He's not as thick as Nico, but I think it's hard for me to get away from a player. I like him more than Coleman, though.
Okay, that's fair. Now, what if I told you, good friend of the show, JJ Zachariason, had tweeted recently,
I saw this,
when Quentin Johnston pops up as Brian Thomas top comparable, and then a gif of a very frustrated man. So, I mean, and it's like RouteScore and analytically stuff. He's not wrong.
So in rookie drafts, let's say he goes as the fourth wide receiver off the board, which he did in Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. That puts him in like 105, 106 range.
Yep, it does.
And what's crazy too, we're not pro scouts. Like, what do we know, right? But like, this is shocking, Kyle. But like everyone you look at that like is respectable in the NFL draft community, when you look at their big board, almost everyone has Brian Thomas as a top 20 overall player, not wide receiver, player in the draft. So I don't know. I feel like I'm missing something, but the NFL is going to tell us a lot, and he's probably going to get round one draft capital, right? So you throw that in, whereas like you could see Keon Coleman fall out a little bit. You could see maybe Troy Franklin fall out of the first round a little bit. A.D. Mitchell, other guys. Well, hey,
speak about Troy that way.
Take it easy, man.
we gotta heat check ourselves, fellas, because Troy's the man. But just saying, like the NFL is into this dude. Just throwing that out there for everyone else that is kind of questioning his profile. Just that's what I see around the league and around kind of NFL draft circles. So that's at least in his camp.
Dynasty is all fun and games when it's the offseason. We're like, let's talk about this player. This could be fun. And then I have a terrible feeling in my stomach that when it comes down to taking a pick for your team, you're just like, I put in all this time and I could be way wrong about this player. It's like,
yeah, Dynasty's fun.
And wide receivers, I mean, we mentioned this, so all over the map that the NFL, not just us in our little fake fun game that we play, but like the NFL takes these players in the top 10 and they like colossally bust, like just not even in the NFL anymore. So, oh man, he's interesting, but I think there's more nuance to his game. We'll see where he goes. One more name, and you guys, I'm assuming your pants are off because it's Troy Franklin.
Ooh, baby. Woo.
We're pretty unified here.
What did Jason say? He said, make sure on the podcast you tell people, oh, I love Troy. That's all he wanted us to say.
Yes. Jason Moore wants to make sure everyone, because he was not scheduled for this show, that he loves Troy Franklin. And honestly, you should too. Like it. So
this could only go wrong for us.
Yeah. What could go wrong? Around the office when we're all scouting, talk about me, Jason, and Andy. A lot of times you'll hear, hey, so who have you scouted at wide receiver? And you're trying to wait for a name, and if they haven't listened to your name, you're like, okay, because I got a guy I like. And when those players align, it's not a guarantee that they're going to hit. But we've had several players in the past where we both came to a similar independent conclusion of we really like this player. And Jason had been waiting for me to scout wide receivers because I got a guy I really like. Oh, we'll see, because I didn't know who it was. And then I go watch, Franklin, and Jason makes some kind of comment about, did you watch the guys yet? And I'm like, Is the guy you like Troy Franklin? Because he just skyrocketed in my rankings after further evaluation of him, and he said, "Yep, that was the guy." So we are like universally aligned in our enjoyment of Troy Franklin as a prospect.
I love the slow play because I feel like that's kind of how we all approach it, where it's like, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to mention this. And I found a message. I was messaging Betz when we were doing some film work, and I was like, dude, I was waiting to share, but I was watching a lot of Bo Nix tape, and all I wanted to do was end up watching Troy Franklin and just kind of like go there for a while. Tez Johnson's another wide receiver they have that also really, really good. But he's unique. All right, so he's got the afterburners. He's super fast, 6'3". Right now, it says he's listed at 178. That's really unique for the NFL. Like going back for the last decade, he would be the tallest wide receiver taken in the first 3 rounds that's sub 195 pounds. So he's at 178. So it's like his build, if he comes in at 6'3", is just super unique. He's only 21 years old. And this past year put up 1,383 yards, 14 touchdowns at Oregon. You saw, probably if you're watching college football, the big games against Washington. I mean, there's just a lot to like. He crushed against both man and zone coverage. That's one of 4 wide receivers in this class to get over 3 yards per out run against both. So, man, I think we're going to gush. And Daniel Jeremiah, his most recent mock draft had him going to the Chiefs. So
don't do that to us.
Betz, go for it.
102, lock it in.
If he goes to the Chiefs, ooh baby. It feels like if you want to be part of the cool kids table, you're into Troy Franklin, right? Like everyone loves this guy, and I mean I do too. You watch him play, and he's so special because when you think about his speed and the combine's coming up, everyone has kind of mentioned like this guy might run in the like mid 4.3s. Like he's got speed for days, and that is on tape for sure. But when you think about skinny speed wide receiver, you think, is this guy just Will Fuller or whoever your skinny
Tyquan Thornton,
yeah, whoever your guy is that you remember as just like the downfield guy? No, he is so much more than that. He has an outstanding understanding of zone coverage and how to throttle it down when he needs to. He ran a complex variety of routes at Oregon, used in a bunch of different ways. Just, I love him. I think he's a really special player, and he's a guy that I probably would not have been into 5-6 years ago because of the weight concerns. But as we've seen, the NFL is changing, like we talked about. We saw Tank Dell emerge last year. These kind of nuanced guys that are really talented, even though they are underweight, can win in the NFL. Devonta Smith, another example of that. So Troy Franklin, I love him. If he gets round 1 draft capital, oh my goodness. I mean, he's probably going to go ahead of Brian Thomas for us, I would think. Probably ahead of, I don't know, Keon Coleman at this point. Like
I said 102 if he goes to the Chiefs, Betz.
And what's really fun about some of these guys that are going to go kind of in like the middle to back of round 1 is like they're going to go to pretty good teams with really good quarterbacks, right? So I'm hot and heavy for Troy Franklin. I think he is one of the better prospects in this class that's not Marvin Harrison or Malik Nabers.
And then we've said our piece about Troy Franklin. I mean, elite 99th percentile in RouteScore, but when it comes down to actual market production, he's below where we want to see.
Right below it. Yeah.
He's slightly under in yardage and touchdown percentage, which again is not everything, but it's just saying like there's at least some things of the profile that can help you regain some composure and pump the brakes. Because dude, the first rep of him running was, I mean, it was holy crap. This guy is so fast. It was given a free release, and he just torched this. I mean, he made this DB look so silly. So he's an incredibly fun player. He is fun for fantasy because of this is what we want. You know, if you said is it Will? You said Will Fuller almost like it's a bad thing, but like Will Fuller for a short period of time was awesome. Yeah. The dude the guy's body let him down. His hamstrings just said, I can't run. You're too fast, Will Fuller. So hopefully that doesn't happen to our boy Franklin here. Because if he turned into Will Fuller who didn't get hurt, that's fantastic. That would be an incredible guy to have on your fantasy football team.
Yeah, and Fuller was taken 21st overall. So, I mean, if you got that draft capital, be incredible. But yeah, you mentioned it. There's nuance to the route running. I loved the Colorado game. He basically did everything. Like, it was short area stuff. It was, deep ball. It was, across the middle. So really like that. Washington game, you get to watch 2 of those if you want. But in the first half, there was a point where they just pressed him and there wasn't much there. So could have issue there. But in the second half, he exploded. I did write down winning the ball in the air could be an issue just because of weight concerns. But I mean, compared to Tank Dell, he's a hefty boy. Tank Dell's like what, 165.
Right. But that does, like, landing spot will be important. Hopefully you're getting an offense that utilizes motion, gets guys, like, be creative to make sure that this player can't get jammed on the line. Yeah.
I'm willing to put him as high as I think it's tough to put him above Odunze in just terms of who I like, and the draft capital won't be the same, but it wouldn't shock me if he ends up being, the 4th wide receiver, 5th wide receiver, depending on which team really likes him. Now, there's a couple wide receivers we didn't mention today, and we're going to have an entire episode next week where we talk about, the next part of this class and then some deeper names. There's some guys that we haven't talked about that still could sneak into round 1. Like, these aren't the only dudes, but it seems to be the consensus of the class. So any final thoughts of just this class as a whole, this elite group? Because this is different than what we've had for a while in the NFL. I mean, this is 3 or 4 players that could go in the top 15.
It's very exciting. I'm pumped for the NFL draft and it's fun. There's so many different archetype of players, where Marvin is the traditional dominant X receiver, and then you got these other players who, the idea of if someone is creative and puts Rome as a big slot guy like that. There's so many things that can happen that are fun as long as the New England Patriots don't draft a wide receiver, because then it will be sadness.
What's scary about Troy Franklin is, like, if he is a fringe round 1 guy, like at 33 it's Carolina, at 34 it's New England. It's like, come on, man, please don't do this to us.
Carolina,
yeah, and they need a wide receiver, man.
Yeah, they do.
But I agree, like, the class is really special at the top when you talk about these talents. But there's a lot of really fun, like, projected round 2, round 3 guys that I think are really strong, like, kind of second round rookie picks, which usually we don't have in a class like this, but it's a very deep wide receiver class. And I think we are going to get 1 or 2 of these guys that kind of emerge late in the process where you kind of are like, oh man, like, that guy really came out of nowhere and he's pretty special. So I'm excited to talk about these guys, obviously, but I think the strength of this class, when you think about just the depth, there's a lot of interesting guys that will be round 2, day 2, day 3 picks in the NFL draft.
Yeah, a lot of times people ask, like, is this a good year for, this position? Or, like, if you have early picks this year, and even if you have early second round picks, they're a little bit more valuable in my mind because the class is deeper and you're seeing running backs kind of push down the board, where normally you'd see the opposite problem. Like, okay, well, we're going to, I have to have a running back. So I think there could be a lot of value in that late first round.
Screw them RBs, guys. Except for rookie drafts is where I like to get running backs.
I know that. I feel the same way, but I need them for my team. I need them so bad.
That's the problem with fantasy football, man.
It's the worst. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode. Like we mentioned, next week, we will be talking about more wide receivers. You can go to udkplus.com if you want to end on that Dynasty pass.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.
Whether you're hosting game day or movie night, DiGiorno knows that planning a watch party on a budget isn't easy. You need the perfect setting, the perfect squad, and the perfect eats. Luckily, you're a game time mastermind, and you know that grabbing DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza can bring home a W because it's packed with half a pound of cheese, sauce, and other toppings and comes at an incredible price. Make the game-winning call and grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.